Welcome to Cardboard Conjecture. We're a podcast about board games where we have opinions and conclusions formed on the basis of incomplete information. This episode of Cardboard Conjecture is brought to you by these great Saskatoon businesses: Amazing Stories Comics on 8th Street, Dragon's Den Games on 8th Street, MrDiceGuy.com, and Breakout Escape Rooms on Faithful Avenue. Welcome to Cardboard Conjecture. I'm your host, Norm.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Ian.
And on today's episode, we have a guest, Emma Larkins, on during our little topics of interest part, but we also have reviews. And Ryan, what are you going to do?
I will be talking about Cosmic Encounter Duel. Ta-ta-ta.
I keep wanting to hold off. Cha-cha-cha. We got to keep the cha-cha-cha. Cardboard Conjecture is proudly sponsored by Amazing Stories Comics on 8th Street in Saskatoon. They are the winner of the Joe Shuster Award for Best Comic Book Store in Canada, and they were also nominated in 2016 for the U.S. Eisner Spirit of Comics Retailer Award presented at Comic-Con. Amazing Stories' amazing collection of comic books, board games, puzzles, and collectibles can be found in their store or on their new online website. Welcome back. This is Cardboard Conjecture, and we are going straight into playing, thinking, doing, all about the board games. Who wants to lead off? I'm. You know what? I'm going to take point. I'm going to start us off with this one.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
I did my homework. I got my notes done. So now we're still unable to meet as a group or, a gathering of carbon-based life forms in the same proximity. So I've had to play a lot of online games, as probably both of you guys have too. On Board Game Arena, Expedition Northwest Passage. I've had the pleasure of playing that a ton. So designed by Yves Tournier, published by Matago Games. This is a 1 to 4 player game. Takes around 60 minutes on the box if you're going to play it face to face. But I've been playing a asynchronous game that's taken me about 3 weeks. But this game, basically, 1845 Franklin Expedition on behalf of the British Royal Navy sets out to find the Northwest Passage in Canada's Arctic, and as history says, they never did find it. The ship was lost, disappeared. So in this game, Expedition Northwest Passage, players race across Canada's Arctic through the Northwest Passage from Greenland to the shores of the Yukon and back to Greenland again. So while you're racing, you're also going to be in search of expedition artifacts and there's other of these sites and wrecks and identifiers that contribute to a set collection and the game point system thing. So, but at the core of this game, which I'm fired up about always, it's a race game. And but as I said here, it's a race game wrapped around a tile drafting and tile laying engine. So yeah, it's a race game, but there is no map in front of you because it's an exploration part too. It's driven by what they say is action point system, but it's disguised as a worker placement because you have your little board. On the top part's the ship, on the bottom part is a dog sled team, because that's how your race happens. Because the cool thing about this game is that it's the timer, right? So the dog sled is important because there's a timer. It's a sun disk that goes around the board, and as it's going, because it's a grid system, and as this disk goes around the board, the ice cap line either recedes or increases and could catch your ship and freeze it into place, which means that you are now only dog sled dependent to get to the Yukon shores. To basically, I mean, when you get to the Yukon shores, there's first place gets a large chunk of points. Second place gets another chunk of points. So that's the division of points. So there's an objective to get to the Yukon shores, and then the same thing back. That first place gets a good chunk, but that set collection comes back. So that's what I've been playing. It's such a fun thing. I think I want to review it later on. But so that's Expedition Northwest Passage by Yves Tournier and published by Matago, which I'm a big fan of because they're the ones that do Kemet.
Yeah, I got this pulled up on BGG here. It has a pretty neat little table presence of the of all these like rectangular tiles, it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're placing these tiles out on the board to kind of create
your map.
The map, I guess. So
Yeah.
the map will be kind of different.
And if you're able to complete an island, that's one of those end of game bonus points of circumnavigating an island and being a cartographer and getting some points for it. So that's the cool part. And of course, like very much like Tokaido, if you have one of each, then if you have a one unique one, you get a point. If you have a unique one and another one, you get 3 points. And that whole incremental, if you get the 5 unique ones as a set, you get these huge bonus points at the end. So yeah, I really dig that. You guys should have a peek.
I actually have played it. I played it on BGA. I didn't really know what I was doing at all. Not a clue. And my friend Matt was getting a little snippy with me because I just kind of expected to know how to do it. And I didn't read the rules. And so he kept getting mad at me. He's like, read the rules. All I want to know is how to do this.
RTFM, man.
So I refused to read the rules, and I thought I could just figure it out by doing stuff. But it wasn't that intuitive as I thought it was going to be. I'd be really interested to play it in real life and see what the actual board game is like. Because I think the theme is awesome. I love the theme. Great theme.
Yeah.
Well, as you're also talking to Norm, it kind of was giving me vibes of Akratiri a little bit.
You know what? I mean, as far as the creating the islands and creating the map, absolutely. Yeah. You are a participant in either making it a really easy navigable thing from one point to the other and back, or I'm playing a game now where the other guys are just bound and determined to just put island walls, and it's like you're going to cut us off. We can't. You're going to plug us up so much with the map that we can't get to the Yukon shores and back. So yeah, and the timer goes, man. It's like every time you run out of turns, boom, that sundial makes a move and it moves that ice line, and it's like you could be looking at, oh man, my ship's gonna get frozen in way before I want to, and then you can either split up your crew or there's so much cool things about this game.
Neat.
Cool.
Yeah, I gotta play this. You've invited me to a couple games, and I've yet to pull the trigger because I'm kind of like Ian.
Well,
I don't know the rules yet.
Well, you know what? We'll organize ourselves. We'll do a Zoom play, and then I can talk you through it and go, all right, this is what you want to do, this or this, and get you. You know what? Once you get through one round, you'll go, oh yeah, okay, I got this. It's these 3 games mashed together.
That ice melting thing is pretty cool too, the way that the board opens up or closes depending on where the sun is.
The freeze in, man.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of a game I have called Antarctica, which I think I'm the only one who's ever played it.
Ryan told me about that.
No, I played it with you.
Yeah. I think it's quite underrated. I like it quite a bit, but your boats are where you use your boats to move actions, but they're frozen in the ice until the sun gets to your section. And so figuring out where to put your boat so that it'll melt soon is a pretty neat strategy. So I like
well,
that
you know
idea.
what? I think my pitch has convinced you guys that we need to do a play, and then you guys can definitely get latched into this one. Cool.
Okay, you teach us this, and I'll teach you Zolkin.
Deal. I'm a sucker for a gimmick, man. I love the cog idea. Who wants to go next?
Sure, I can go here.
All right.
So Jen and I, we've been kind of playing through the Tiny Epic games so far, and so if you don't know what the Tiny Epic games are, it's a series of games designed by Scott Alms and published by Gamelin Games, and there's a whole bunch of them that are out there right now, and each game is designed. They're all designed with a solo mode, and they all play with up to 4 or 5 players each. And each game plays very, very quickly. And that's kind of like why we've been playing them. They've been playing within they can play within 30 to 60 minutes, depending on how many players that you actually have. And so quick games as of late, these are getting played more often because our kids are going to bed later and later, and we're getting tireder and tireder. So if we can get a game in that 30 to 60 minute range, we're doing pretty good. And the idea of these tiny epic games is what their selling point is that they're trying to bring a big game, some would say maybe epic game, but packaging it into a really small box. And so far there's a whole bunch of them. There's Tiny Epic Kingdoms, Defenders, Galaxies, Western, Quest, Zombies, Mechs, Tactics, not yet released, but I have backed on Kickstarter, Dinosaurs, and Pirates. And we own all of them except for Defenders and Western. And so the ones that we've played and the ones that we actually really, really enjoy is I really enjoy Tiny Epic Galaxies, because at its core it's a dice action selection type of game. So kind of think Castles of Burgundy.
Yeah.
Where when you roll the dice and then you have to take actions with certain dice. And yeah, there's a whole bunch of different things. You're trying to settle planets, get some points from those planets. Those planets will give you abilities. It's a really, really, really neat game. It's a race to 21 points. That one's been by far our favorite because we can knock out a couple games in that 60 minute range. Cool. Another one that we've really started to enjoy is Tiny Epic Mechs.
Yeah, I have this
a little arena combat game where your meeples sit inside these little plastic mechs, and you're having a battle inside this little arena. And how you take your actions is that it's an action programming game. You have to program what your mech is going to do. Is it going to move, then shoot, turn, go here, turn, move, and then there's a whole bunch of crazy things that you can people can mess up your program. That one I think is kind of like our second favorite right now. It's been really, really fun.
The toy factor on that one's pretty cool.
Yeah, the components of that one is really, really, really top notch. And I didn't put it in the show notes, but if I would say a third one would be kind of Tiny Epic Quest. And I always like to joke that it's Tiny Epic Legend of Zelda.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Where it's you just kind of go around the board, kind of doing what you want. You can beat up monsters to get up points. You can complete quests to get points. You can kind of do a pick up and deliver thing to get points, to upgrade your spell book. You can do a whole bunch of different things, and you're just trying to do things as best as possible to get as many points from your opponent. And all you're doing is that the layout is all these cards that make up this big old map, and you're just traveling across the board. And like it says, Tiny Epic Quest, you're completing quests, or you're defeating monsters, or you're raiding temples, or along those lines. And the amount of gameplay that you get inside these small boxes is really, really quite extraordinary. Scott Alms is on to a really big thing here, because they don't take up a lot of shelf space. And you do get kind of a big board game feeling, but out of just usually just a deck of cards and some little bits and components. So Tiny Epic games, we've been playing through them. I want to play through them all. Just the ones that we have. Yeah. Have you guys had any experiences with Tiny Epics?
Not at all.
I own a few. I'm looking right now. I have Defenders. I have a Mechs. I have Zombies. I had what was it? Kingdoms. Got rid of it because it didn't really, scratch that itch. But then I understand that it has a new edition, and I believe it was. Again, he's at fault so much for this. Rado says that it's way better than the first one, and if you should give it a shot, that whole pitch to it. But I really enjoy Galaxies. Yeah,
and Zombies is our next play. We're going to be playing that because that one's kind of interesting, because that one, the first one that has 4 or 5 different modes of playing. You can play completely cooperative.
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
you can play competitive against the zombies, or you can play one player plays the zombies and one
Yeah.
player plays the survivors.
Yeah, or solo mode. Yeah.
Yeah, so it
I quite
that
enjoy
one's-
it. I quite enjoy that series.
that one's kind of interesting to me just because it has all the different modes of play. But
The
yeah, Tiny Epics, Scott Elms.
cool. Ian.
Okay, I've actually played a board game. So
I know we all kind of like leapt for joy at one point.
I'm gonna have like a little kind of cheering background sound effect go
Yeah.
off.
I played Le Havre,
Ooh.
which
Love that game.
it's a great game. So Le Havre is Uwe Rosenberg, right? It was kind of his big one right after Agricola, and
And it doesn't use polyomino tiles.
no, not like his recent stuff. No, Le Havre, you're basically getting goods and making them better and collecting more. That's what you're doing, but you're building these buildings right out of the cards, and that's where the key is. First couple times I played this game, I could not figure it out. Like I couldn't figure out even what the objective of the game was, because I'm like, why do I care about having fish, or why do I care about getting steel? Like I couldn't see the connections there. Finally, I figured it out, and I'm like, oh, your only goal is just to make as much money as you possibly can. But depending on the buildings you get, you can use these goods to accumulate that money. And then there's the whole feeding aspect, right? So you've got to feed all your workers, and so that's where making food is really good. And so if you can narrow down what buildings you want, you can really, really get some good engines built up and get rolling. So like this one, for example, I got cows like crazy. Cows. Get the slaughterhouse or whatever it's called. Make them into meat, and you can be able to feed your family for days. And it's good stuff. I love Le Havre. You've all played it, right?
Oh, that's in my top. I think my top 5 games of all time. Oh yeah, awesome. I love that one. And it wouldn't be Rosenberg if you didn't have to feed somebody.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And I thought I had it. Like I was doing so good. I was getting all these engines going, and I'm playing against my wife, and I'm like, I'm just gonna crush her. I'm going to absolutely crush her. And I felt kind of bad about that. End of the game. Out of the score, she was like 54 points, and I did.
Oh, I know. It's the stealthiest. Yeah, it's the stealthiest accumulation of victory points. Yeah. And then, or the one I hate the most is, how did you get to steal ships so fast? Well, what do you have something in your backyard that I'm not aware of? Yeah. No, I love that game.
And of course, you played the long game, right? The full game.
I believe so. Yeah. Yeah, we did.
Because this is the one that there's 2 different modes of play, right? There's the short game and there's the long game.
Yeah, you can cut it down.
Yeah, I don't know why. I always say, well, just go for the long game. Yeah, sure, it probably is going to take quite a bit longer.
Well,
you got to get the full experience.
Yeah,
that's right, yeah.
But if you're a full player count, which you should never play this game at,
is I think we did the first time.
Oh,
we played it.
Yeah, and we did the long too.
And we did the long game.
I think it was like a 6-hour game. It felt like, but it was awesome. Don't get me wrong.
Because none of us knew what we were doing.
Yeah, there wasn't AP. It was more like, I don't. Does someone have a script I can follow? I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Yeah, but I've gotten a little bit better since then.
Yeah, I'm excited to keep playing it more and kind of explore it more and figure it out.
I own the Scott Alms, what they should have called Tiny Epic Le Havre, but it's called Harbor.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
It's got the Le Havre feeling, but in like it's just like a small box of cards where it's still like worker placement.
It's a very condensed abstraction of a lot of that.
Oh, very
flippant stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like what we say. It's worker placement, resource gathering, convert those resources into money or points, and
Ian, you would like, and it's you'd like Harbor, and it's like you said, a version of the Tiny Epic kind of concept.
Yeah, they just he didn't call it Tiny Epic.
This episode of Cardboard Conjecture is proudly sponsored by Dragon's Den Games, located in the Louis VIII Mall on 8th Street in Saskatoon. Swing by Dragon's Den Games and let Darren, Al, and the awesome staff help you out in search for great board games, role-playing games, miniature systems, and all of the related accessories. Be a part of their gaming communities that have scheduled events in their great gaming area. Dragon's Den Games, Louis VIII Mall on 8th Street in Saskatoon. Welcome back to Cardboard Conjecture. We are going to proceed to, in this section, we're going to do some news, some topics of interest, but let's start off with some news. And Ryan usually do the little, there you go. Well, lead us into this, man. You guys got some juicy stuff to talk about.
Well, I think we just got a couple or a few game announcements that have just kind of come down the pipeline just within the past week or so. So like one of the big ones, because, I'm everything all in about Stonemaier Games and what they're doing. So he just announced their 2020 release, which is kind of unique. He says we only produce or come out with 1 or 2 games a year. And this year it's only going to be one, with, of course, we kind of know why, is there's only going to be one release this year. But he released that it's going to be called Pendulum. And of course, the code name for Pendulum all throughout the Stonemaier process was codename Sand. And that's because Pendulum is going to be they're advertising it as a real-time worker placement game. And why it was codenamed Sand is because you're going to be using sand timers as I think. Now, I haven't heard exactly if they're going to be using the sand timers as the actual workers, or if the sand timers are going to be kind of like timing aspects of the game. But they do note that the real time, is a valuable resource in the game. So I'm very interested. I've been kind of following the design diary a little bit, but they've only just kind of released that this was like it's the top rated game at the Stonemaier Games Design Day. Like he always has a Design Day every year.
Yeah.
And so far, this one has been the top rated game out of all of his design days.
Ooh.
So far.
So it's got a good hot news release then.
Yeah. And so some Twitter folks have been commenting to me about that they've played like the prototype or a version of the prototype, and that the prototype was super, super good.
Cool.
And so they're really excited. This might be. So I don't know if this. I hope this is not another Tapestry, where the hype, like we hype up this game and then it kind of falls flat. But
I was going to bring us to the Tapestry topic, but hey.
But as of what I've heard right now, and what I've seen, it looks like it could be. It's definitely interesting enough.
Cool.
It's kind of.
And if this sand timer mechanism catches on, we may finally get that Days of Our Lives board game that we've all wanted.
Nice one.
I like it. I thought you were going to go with we're doing sand timers again. We're going to have to get the dice popper going back, or the
Pop-O-Matic.
Oh, now I got like some soaps running in the background of my head now. Awesome.
Yeah, so Stonemaier Games, I think he's planning to do pre-orders in August. Yeah, it says pre-orders are going to be opening up in August.
He's going to crash his server.
Well, that's what happened with Tapestry.
Yeah. but that's a good problem to have, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Ian
had one.
You have a news item. I just saw it today.
You texted us
breaking news. It looks like we have Pandemic
like
Legacy
an outbreak?
Season 3. Oh, but is it? Actually, we have Pandemic Legacy Season 0.
What?
So that means we're Phantom Menacing this baby up. It's a prequel.
We're going prequel style.
We're going Hot Tub Time Machine, aren't we?
Looks like it. And that's all we know. We got the cover, and it looks like...
Well, what was the theory that you texted?
You mean my crackpot theory? I said, what if this whole Season 0 thing is we have to go back in time to stop the events of Season 1, and then you alter time, and now you have to replay season 1 again, but with like the new recharge pack or something like that, because we've changed the events.
You've just monetized. You've just given them such a monetization structure that they're frothing right now.
Yes, because I believe those guys, Matt Leacock and the pandemic team, need my ideas.
Because they're not smart enough to think about this on their own. Cool.
I don't know when it's coming out yet.
No, it's kind of like, I know it's just a YouTube video, right?
Yeah. Well, did you guys play together on season 1
and 2?
And 2, okay.
Yeah.
The team's coming back.
It'll only take us 3 years this time.
The only pandemic that I've played is Rising Tides. That's the one that appeals to me. I've played the base game a couple times and then went, the whole idea, considering the context of what was going on for me at the time, I wasn't a big fan of like viral outbreaks or diseases kind of thing. So that's why when the thematic concept of Rising Tides came out, I mean, I love that pandemic engine as far as like the cooperative engine with that card system. And it's like, okay, now we know what hot spots we have to focus on. And that whole concept worked so well in Rising Tides with the idea of, water, right?
Yeah, you would really like Pandemic Fall of Rome.
I've been trying to find a copy.
Or Flashpoint, maybe. You might like Flashpoint.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, so season 0, I'm excited.
Me too.
We could have like a pandemic episode and just review and talk about the pandemic stuff.
Take a pandemic and really. Oh, okay.
It could be like a dark comedy episode during a pandemic. We're talking about pandemic games. Absolutely, Blackadder. What else? What else is hitting the news ticker tape there, gentlemen?
I've only got one more just because I've been intrigued by this, and then I had no idea that Ian actually owned the original. So now I have to hit him up and play this one before this one comes out. But we have Reiner Knizia's Lord of the Rings Anniversary Edition being announced by Fantasy Flight Games. So yeah, it looks like they're bringing back the old Lord of the Rings game that I know absolutely nothing about.
Ian,
we have not played this.
You got to talk
I have not played this one.
I have no idea what this game's about. I don't even know if it's cards, dice,
all
minis,
it says here,
tiles.
It's classic cooperative.
Yeah, it's a co-op. It's
They don't know my family.
I don't even know how to describe it. You're just kind of moving your hobbits through there's actually 3 different boards. You got to get to the end of each of these boards. It's a lot of card play.
Okay.
You got to save up the right cards so you can move to the right spaces.
What's the board? Is it a grid? Is it a map? Is it
just spots? Really.
I have no visual like reference points at all. Okay, cool.
Oh yeah, so it looks like here that Fantasy Flight looks like the old version had some like standees and some cardboard things. Well, I'm just
I don't have standees.
I'm just going by what their picture looks like. They kind of look like standees, but they're replacing everything with like plastic miniatures or resin miniatures, and looks like some upgraded dice and some plastic. Looks like they're just going to give it the minis treatment.
They already are.
Oh, I guess there's some.
There must have been a middle release between mine and the new one, because I have Hobbit minis, and I've got
cool,
like a big Sauron tower, Barad-dûr tower.
Oh man,
figure.
So I think we've had some time. Must have like a space-time continuum jump here and everything, because it sounds like this is Fantasy Flight Games notes that the gameplay of this new edition hasn't been altered, but the punchboard components have all been replaced by plastic miniatures.
We're so intuitive, man.
So anyways, we're rocking the news about this item because none of us can actually talk about it.
Yeah,
I know. I've got like the old one. They came out with like a.
Is it a good game though?
Yeah, it is a good game.
Okay.
It's not incredible.
How do you win?
You gotta throw the ring in the fire.
I like the subtext of that answer was, Well, did you watch the freaking movie?
Whoa. Spoiler alerts.
Yeah. What? Oh man.
That's awesome.
I gotta stop reading the book.
So it looks like this is upgraded from the middle version, from the second version that they came out with. Because I know they came out with a version where they shrunk the box down a little bit and did that, all that kind of stuff. And I think they made the components cheaper for that one. So I think this is almost like going back to the older version.
Yes.
So there's no reason for me to get this new version whatsoever because that's not everything.
Right.
But the box says Anniversary Edition.
Okay.
Fantasy Flight Games doesn't mention whether any of the expansions will return to print. Dun dun dun.
Oh, FOMO just kicking in for people. That one person who's listening.
Well, if you're going to do an Anniversary Edition, just give it a big box and throw everything in it. Oh, wait, here we go with the big box.
No.
This episode is proudly supported by the amazing team at Breakout Escape and Board Game Lounge right here in Saskatoon. Using industry-leading technology, Breakout Escape's escape rooms are all 100% uniquely designed by the team, ensuring their patrons have maximum fun while staying safe. As well, they are a fully licensed board game lounge with over 400 titles to select from to ensure fun for every gamer, new and experienced. Be sure to check them out at breakoutsask.com. At Breakout Escapes and Game Lounge, they believe that life is more fun when you play games.
Welcome back to Cardboard Conjecture. We are now into one of my favorite segments, the interview segment, because it's so much fun to have new people to talk to, especially during this pandemic where I think my wife's heard every joke I have about 1,000 times, and now the cat's even ignoring me. So yeah, I get to talk to other human beings.
Me and Ryan have heard the same jokes too, so this is good.
Yeah. So basically, the eye rolling is kept to a minimum, and but this time, we're so fortunate to have on the episode Emma Larkins, designer, content creator. Emma, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. Also, I love jokes, and I laugh very easily. So if you say something funny, you'll probably get a laugh out of me.
See, but that funny is interpretable, right?
Fair.
So, like I said, I've got an interesting format because all three of us are school teachers. So we like to do our research. We like our context. We like to know the purpose. A lot of the times, at least our students do. Hey, Ian, why are we doing this?
Oh yeah, especially with math.
When am I ever going to use this? But so in this case, Emma, we're going to start with the backstory because I'm a true believer of what's happening now is because of stuff that's happened before. So if that's metaphysical and bizarre. So according to the ball cap that I'm wearing that nobody can see, you went to Stanford University where you studied product design.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, you have done your research.
And then from there, you went on to marketing department for an indie video game company. I'm going to want to ask you some about that. Then I see that you were an events organizer for a pool hall in New York City, which is one of my favorite places to visit and never want to live in.
Yeah.
You are a weekly board game. You have a weekly board game news show on Twitch, presented by Gen Con, that I had I kind of popped in as much as I could to, get a taste of what was going on. I interpreted this way: you're a contractor for workshopping games, and you have a playcrafting kind of initiative going on.
Yeah, the playcrafting was a while back when I was in New York City. So I was doing community management for mostly video game community for designers and developers.
Okay, so let's pop back to Stanford product design. What entails? Like, is that the seeds? Are you fortunate enough to actually have a career in what you went to university for?
Well, it's really funny, Basically, what happened was I went to college, came back to the West Coast. I was born in California, went back to school in California. My parents were very far away, but they still had a little grasp on me and said, look, you need to study something that you're going to get a job in. So I don't know how much you know about Stanford, but there's fuzzies and techies. So they told me I had to do something techie. So of course I picked the absolute fuzziest techie field that I could get into. And product design, back when I was going to Stanford, which is quite a while ago now, was this really fascinating combination of, we did a lot of mechanical engineering, we did a lot of hands-on workshops, so
cool.
got to use a lot of the machining tools with the mills and the lathes and things.
Oh, nice.
And we did photography classes, art classes, and then some user testing, user needs, psychological research. So it was this very fascinating mashup degree of all these different things. But again, I hadn't picked it because I was going into some grand career. I basically wanted something, I didn't know what I wanted to be. So I wanted a degree that would just let me do a little bit of everything. And product design was really great for it. So and then I went on this crazy winding path for about 15 years. And it's really kind of ironic that I finally ended up back in a design related field.
Let's talk about the video game company.
Yeah.
How'd you fall into that?
I did video game marketing for a company called Dreamsale Games that unfortunately does not exist anymore, as is the case with many small indie video game studios. Yeah, so I've in my career, I've kind of gone back and forth between creating my own thing and then going and working for a company. So, making my own progress in the world and then going back and doing some more learning and kind of, I see it as education of a sort, right? Getting a job.
Kind of scaffolding your experience. Yeah.
So this one, I forget if someone connected it to me or I might have even just seen the posting. It was a very small company, about 12 or 13 people there. And I had social media and different marketing type backgrounds. So I reached out, had an interview, and before I knew it, was head of marketing for this company. And
cool.
Yeah, it was a really great experience because I think the product design is good representation of this, but I've always had a very good product sense. And I love the creative aspect, but it's always been very important for me for people to experience what I'm creating. And productization is how you get a creative idea into the hands of consumers, right? Through this product, through this process of turning it into something that's consumable. And marketing is really great for that because marketing is really how you kind of sketch out. It happens at the same time as making the product and marketing product, right? The marketing defines the product and the product defines the marketing. So you kind of go back and forth and really get a sense of not only how a product is formed, but how you spread the message and get it to the people who need or want it most. Yeah.
Yeah. Like to marketing in New York City, you've got the widest like swath of anything that you want to market to. So that must have honed your skills a lot. Yeah.
New York was kind of a huge turning point for me in my life and in my career. Up until then, I'd lived a very mostly rural lifestyle. I was born in California, lived in the suburbs, but then my family moved to Maine. So we lived in the backwoods of Maine. We lived in rural parts of Maryland. I lived in Virginia for a while. So I'd never
and gorgeous geography.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Beautiful, beautiful landscapes, but I never had a city living experience. So to go from all of that to, I was out on Long Island for a couple of months and I'm like, I'm just going to move to New York City. And my parents thought I was insane. They're like, you're going to die. But I didn't. I found a sublet with strangers in Brooklyn and I've very much flown by the seat of my pants for a lot of my life. So I'm like, sure, I'll move to Brooklyn. And the funniest thing was like, it almost instantly felt so natural. After a week, I was like, this just feels so normal and comfortable. And just to be surrounded by so many people and creative people and to have like any day of a week, there was thousands of things happening around the city. You walk out on the street and there's someone in a bikini on a tricycle carrying balloons. And then there's a festival the next street over. It's just such a trip.
Spider-Man's handing out Big Mac coupons. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Right. Just like explosion of data and information and experience.
Gen Con, I've got like later on I'll have a question connected to your participation in your weekly Twitch with Gen Con, but do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because it'll come back in about 10 minutes.
Yeah, sure. So I started doing the streaming with Twitch, with Gen Con on Twitch about a year ago. And a lot of the stuff I've come to, especially as I've gotten more into the board gaming industry, it's all connections based.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked at Mechs Boarding House, which is an amazing board game store located here in Seattle and now in Portland. They just opened their Portland store, which is very exciting. But I worked at the one here in Seattle and got to know some people in the industry, and a lot of people had worked at Mechs and then moved on to other board game industry jobs. People worked and they did marketing, or they were connected. So Gen Con actually being based here in Seattle, there was people with partners working for Mechs and Gen Con. So I heard that they were doing this streaming show. I'd done a lot of panels in the past and just like always really loved speaking. So did a screen test for that, and yeah, the rest was history. Been doing a weekly news show for about a year now.
That's awesome. Quickly talking about your involvement in helping others by workshopping their games, and like you said, the playcrafting that you're involved in. Because yeah, that's important.
So playcrafting was an initiative that I did a few years back when I was in New York City. It was called New York City Games Forum before its name changed over to Playcrafting. And that was one of the first things I did that really got me into any sort of games industry. It was a community of not gamers, but of game designers, mostly video games, but some board games as well. Everything from lawyers to musicians, artists. In video games, there's just so many people that come together to make that a possibility. And there's a little budding indie video game design scene in New York City. So again, one of my passions, speaking is one, also community organization, just helping to bring people together, and the performance aspect, it all kind of ties together. So we would do demo nights where we demo 8 games, and we'd have hundreds of people in this room. We get to hold our events at the Microsoft offices, which is really cool. Because in New York City, they're very open to helping indies and small communities. So I'd be there in front of hundreds of people, kind of running back and forth, like starting the demo, and it's just such a rush to be helping people and kind of in front of them.
You wrote a science fiction piece called, I'm going to try without wrecking it, Mechalarum?
Yeah, I would say Becalarum, but that's you did very well there. I'm impressed.
I'm trying to suppress my French inflection and hitting the wrong syllable stress. I read, and I put this in my notes because as I put it in the brackets here, the book's tagline. I read the tagline, and right away I thought I would totally play that game. And what I from my research I have is under a dust storm spawned by nature and sustained by technology, a hidden citadel produces humanity's final hope. And I'm like, I'll play that RPG any day.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then here's some nonfiction pieces. 6 Odd Things Doomsday Preppers Stockpile. That makes sense. This is the one I love because of my psychology background. 4 Disney kids who would have been traumatized for life. 6 awesome game-related careers you didn't know existed. 7 signs of old age that hit most people when they're young. And 6 reasons New York City is the most overrated vacation destination. Those actually sound like set list pieces for a Seinfeld show.
Yeah, well, those were all articles for Cracked, which is a little less well known now. I honestly haven't been back to the site in a while. I assume it still exists. But in its heyday, it was kind of like the humor site, that everyone was going to. And what was really cool about writing for Cracked is they had this whole back end forum system where people pitched, like thousands and thousands of writers would pitch ideas and pick up ideas from other writers and workshop things. So it was this really interesting, just collaborative writing, workshopping experience. And back then I didn't know, I knew I wanted to do something and get creative stuff out into the world, but I kind of felt more would be writing. So doing these articles is a way, to get your name out there and get paid for doing writing. But it's a lot of work. That's the thing. It's like writing a science fiction novel. I've thought about the times, how many hours I put it. It's just hundreds of hours, just like constant, like rereading, like writing the whole draft, rereading, proofing for content, proofing for grammar, proofing for spelling, just going over and over it, just to really hone and polish this thing.
So how did your science fiction novel come about? Because how long ago was that? And
oh gosh, that was about 6 or 7 years that I did the Kickstarter for it. So I'd been writing for years and years. I'd done a few prompts or challenges to write the first draft of a fiction novel. My first challenge was, 15 minutes a day. You can do anything in 15 minutes. So I was just like 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there. The next few times that I wrote first drafts of novels were through NaNoWriMo, which is the National Novel Writing Month, which is a great exercise that they do in November. Again, that I haven't done in a few years, but I believe still exists. Cool. And you write 50,000 words, and it's really cool because the website has charts and things, and you can do challenges, like just tweet out, I'm doing a writing sprint, and see how many words you can write in 50 minutes or an hour or whatever. So it's a great way just to get it out there. Yeah. And then I happened to work for a company in New York City that was one of these social media tech startups that, again, doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. But they wanted to do things related to crowdfunding and Kickstarter. And so they're like, me as kind of half intern, half like part-time employee, weird thing. They're like, how about as part of your job, you run a Kickstarter to learn how it works? I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. I'll do this science fiction novel. So I did the Kickstarter for it and then followed through and had to write it and go through that whole process.
Okay, so the fact that you wrote a book to test out Kickstarter is hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, again, like all of this was kind of me figuring out how I wanted to get creative stuff into the world. And I think that is important for creators to think about that. Like you might say, great. I want to make a board game because I don't know how to make anything else. And you should, make a board game, try and make a board game, but do you enjoy that? Maybe you do. Maybe you find out it's like, oh, I actually want to do board game content. I want to do a podcast or a video, and just keep trying creative things. The first thing you might try being a musician. You might not like that. Sometimes you have to just try a few things before you land on the thing that really makes you happy.
Awesome.
And again, I'm seeing this thread of experience that accumulates to the present, and let's march ourselves to the present as a board game designer. So in 2016, you came out with Heart Catchers. Mm-hmm. And in 2018, you came out with And Then We Died. Mm-hmm. And 2020, which I think is going to have a big asterisk from a history point of view, Abandon All Artichokes. So before we get to Artichokes, do you want to give us a little kind of trailer of your first two games?
Yeah, so Heart Catchers was that one that I mentioned that Gil tested way back in the day. Okay. It was a game, the first board game that I ever designed. Game design kind of as a theme and creativity going back, but the first full playable board physical game. I made it as a Valentine's Day present for my then boyfriend, now husband. Yay! Because when we met, he was working on a game and kind of helped get me into that universe. Really helped me get started here. And so I made that, tested it. Again, I was starting to build a lot of connections in this industry, and ended up finding through these playtesting meetings someone who had self-published their own game or looking to publish other games, specifically very short, small 2-player games. And we had this publisher meet cute where I asked him to coffee to get advice about my game, and about halfway through he's like, yeah, just like, and this is good stuff, you're doing good. So have you ever thought about getting a publisher? And I was like shocked. He's like, it's okay if you don't want to. I'm like, no, I didn't know this is where this was going. And I was shocked and excited and pleased. So that ended up coming to fruition. We did a Kickstarter for that. While that was all going on, I started the design of And Then We Died. It's an idea that came to me in a dream of doing some creepy storytelling thing. Worked on that for a few years, released it. And as time progressed, really starting to focus more and more on game design, doing a lot of prototypes, kind of turning it into more of a professional thing.
Cool. Okay. Abandon All Artichokes. It's probably the cutest cover I've seen in a long time. Do you want to quickly mention the artist? Because I don't think the artists nowadays get as much cred, because a lot of, for me at least, my impulse, it's like, oh, that's, ooh, shiny, right? I mean, the art pulls me in a lot of the time. So.
Oh, yeah. I cannot give enough credit to Bonnie Pang for doing this, just the absolutely adorable vegetable art for the cover, for the tin cover, and then also for the cards on the game. I didn't have anything to do with that. That was the artist that was chosen by GameRight, but okay. I just like almost a spirit connection for how well Bonnie was able to capture what I had in mind. When I did the prototype art, it was food with faces, so it's a little bit weird. I mean, I've always loved GameRight games, so that might have been in the back of my mind. But the very, very first prototype, I found a clip art of a strawberry, and I found a clip art of some googly eyes, and I put it on there. I'm like, this is my deck builder now. It has fruit with faces, because I like just weird, silly stuff like that. Yeah, and so Bonnie was able to take it. What I really love about what the art has done is it's cute, but not cutesy. No. I think that it really captures, it's a 10 plus age game. So it is, a lot of 6-year-olds can play it, a lot of 8-year-olds can play it, but on the box, it's 10 plus. Yeah. So you don't want it to look like, a 4-year-old, 6-year-old game. So I think just that perfect intersection of adorability and maturity.
Well, and the art, like you said, isn't childish, because each image has a little bit of emotional depth in the expression.
Oh yeah.
Right. Yeah. And not so much so that it's dramatic, but enough that you oh, there, that's inquisitive, or that's, as the Onion would say, that's very satirical. And the first thing they captured, of course, was the art, and I really hope a lot of people catch the foodie joke on the bottom, the heartless card game.
Yeah.
And I think, it ties into the food because of the artichoke hearts, but also the fact that it's a deck building destruction mechanism. If you want to talk to us about that, like, let's get into this game and you tell us what this game is about.
Yeah, absolutely. So the term that we kind of coined amongst ourselves was deck wrecker.
Deck wreckers, that's what it was, yes.
I like that. That sounds good.
Yeah. So the 4 people who've played deck builders usually start with some number of cards. They're a little useful, but not very useful. The goal is to somehow get more cards into your deck until some determined end point of the game. A lot of them will have this function where, as you play, now you've got this stuff that isn't useful anymore, and deck builders will often have ways to trash or remove things permanently from your deck. Mm-hmm. And for me, playing deck builders, this is always one of the most fun things. It's just like, yeah, you're gone forever, banish ye. So that's the core of the game. You start with all artichokes. They're not even less useful, they're useless outside of a couple of specific circumstances. But your goal is to draw a hand of no artichokes. So it's this idea that as you're putting new cards in, you're getting artichokes out, you're shuffling your deck, drawing a new hand at the end of each turn. If any of those just happens to have no artichokes, you immediately win the game. So even though the title is Abandon All Artichokes, it's a little bit of a misnomer. You don't have to get rid of every single artichoke in your deck, which is nice. There's a little bit of uncertainty there. Not very many deck builders is the end condition uncertain. Usually it's, certain piles are exhausted or a certain condition is reached. So for this one, almost every turn could be the last turn. So there's definitely an interesting tension there.
But
It was
I like
really
that it has a nice, like, this is the end, right? Like, it's a very clear end game, which it's kind of nice that way. It's not, okay, we're done now, let's count up all our points. It's, you've done this, you have succeeded in this particular goal, you're the winner. I really like that idea.
You had said that your second game came to you in a dream.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as far as what I've seen in your history, you're very creative all the time, but there's got to be that impetus, that little spark, that little itch where all of a sudden you go, huh, what if I tried this? So describe that moment, if you wish.
So one of the things I'm very proud about Abandon All Artichokes for is the fact that it's name first game design. So in the board game design community, we're always talking about, oh, do you design theme first, mechanics first, feel first? But this one was name first. I had this exercise I was doing for a while called Game Design Daily, where I would issue myself these little challenges to kind of help spark my creativity. And one of them was, I was on the bus, I'm like, I'm just going to write down a bunch of alliterative game names. So it's like Bounce Banjos or Emu Escape. You know, not even really game names, just funny combinations of alliterative words is really what it was. So I posted this on Twitter, and coming back to the product and marketing thing, and somebody on there said that they would buy Abandon All Artichokes. So I just posted the whole list, and they read the list, and out of that, Abandon All Artichokes stood out. And that was, that caught my attention. You know, I'm like, I should work on this at some point. Like the fact that just the name is so capturing for at least one person in the world.
And at this point, did the mechanism at all come in?
Or no.
Okay.
Literally just a name. Yeah. Nothing that it would be deck builders, like cards or anything. Just those three words, Abandon All Artichokes. It wasn't until months later that I was doing a design a game a day challenge for a week. So 7 days, design 7 games, that the name came back to me. I had written a note of it or something. And I think it was just staring at that name, saying Abandon Artichokes. And then I was thinking about just like what thing do you get rid of things? And I think deck building just kind of connected. So I'm like, I guess I'll just make it be a deck builder. Just those two things together became the starting foundation of the game.
Once you had this in your head, how long till you had yourself a copy in your hand that you went, okay, I'm ready to share this with someone to provide me some feedback?
Well, 2 hours.
Wow.
So,
okay.
Well, this was, I gave myself the challenge of designing a game, and they had to be very simple games too, because not like designing it and then testing it. So my husband, the treasure that he is willing to play test these super, super rough early designs. And of the 7 that I made that week, 6 of them were completely broken and unplayable. But Abandon All Artichokes, I think I had like four or 5 different cards. I had like a trash card, a draw a card, this like attack mechanism, and the artichokes. So it's just, there was barely anything there, except this idea is like, oh, I'll get these things and I can play this and get stuff out of my deck. And you could get to a point where you eventually won the game. And just based on that, there was enough there that I could iterate on it a few times to get to the point where I could show it to people other than my husband.
Okay.
Is there, and then so kind of metas in Abandon All Artichokes, you know, there's a meta where you get rid of almost all your cards. You might only have 2 cards left at the end of the game. There's a meta where you get lots of cards. So it's a bulking strategy. And so being able to come with lots of ideas for different abilities, having this, like you said, the sticky notes in your brain, you're like, oh, well, if one card, discarding, right? You know, it's like such a classic the graveyard decks, right? So knowing that that's a thing, and the different zones you play around, it's like, there's so many zones, you know, other people's hands, other people's decks, the marketplace / garden, your deck, your hand, your discard pile.
Well, when I look at Game Right's games, and your game, from what I've read up on it and watched about it, it seems to fit in really nicely, because it's almost like I can really see it being the introductory deck building game. right? Kind of in the same way, Sushi Go is like what you'd play before you play Seven Wonders, right? So I think it would be cool. Like I'm thinking, could I buy this for my classroom, right? Could my students who really don't have a lot of gaming experience, could they, like, do you think this is a game that I just throw to a bunch of grade 8 students and say, have at it?
Yeah, I think so. There's, I made some good choices, but I also got kind of lucky with stuff like my first deck builder thing. The fact that GameRight does, you're absolutely right, like to make those games that are an intro into these mechanics, which is really great because they can straddle that kind of mass market plus / hobby boundary, because a lot of hobbyist people are looking for games that they can enjoy and get new people into the hobby of playing board games. I would say for grade 8 students, very much so. I think that a lot of students of that age will feel pretty comfortable with it. In some ways, it can be a little easier for younger kids because they'll just do this stuff. You're like, okay, now do this. They're like, okay, sure. As kids get a little older, I'm sure you'll be able to confirm this.
Yeah,
like you had said earlier, it's like they start to question, like, oh, but why am I doing this, right? Like you have to explain to them that
they
it's like,
overprocess.
yeah. So I've had just a very few people come say, it was a little confusing. Luckily, there's been a lot of amazing videos that really take it step by step. And I've been very grateful for people who've made amazing content about the game. Everything from GameRight's animated videos that are really great how-to people who play through a whole game so you get a sense of the scope of the game. So I think it's something that most people can get into, but there is some hobbyist stuff there. I've played with people who say like, okay, discard your hand, and they take their cards and put them face down on top of their deck. And I have to sit there for a moment and just realize that those are all keywords that they don't, like discard deck, discard pile, all of those are things that are learned, right? So it's a language, right? If you don't know the language, you kind of have to learn a little bit of the language before you can access some of these things.
Well, as a Dominion fan, one thing that caught my interest when I was looking at some run-through videos there was the fact that you start with a hand of completely useless cards.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's fascinating. That's that's really, what do? You got to work with that. It's cool.
Well, yeah, just like breaking a lot of the traditional rules. You start with stuff that's absolutely useless, but it still works as a game. No currency is another big thing. You get stuff from the market / garden every turn, and you put it straight into your hand. So most deck builders, you'll put it into your discard pile, so it takes a while to cycle through, and you might not even ever see that thing. So there was just a ton of the balancing work that went into it was to make every single card, because it's a randomized market. It's not a determined pile market like Dominion.
Right. Yeah.
So making pretty much any point of the game, pretty much any distribution of cards in the garden, you'll find something that's useful or interesting to you to take. Take it straight into your hand. You can play it right away, and just kind of for this light introductory deck builder, deck wrecker, getting rid of all those kind of little annoyances that other deck builders have, and not even annoyances. Sometimes it adds to the game. It slows the game down, right? So this thing, it's like you can have that core deck building experience faster, easier, and there's a lot of I followed a lot of what people did naturally in playtesting. So when people are playtesting who weren't gamers, they take the card into their hand from the market and just have it in their hand. Like,
oh, that's good.
Okay, so I let them do that, right?
Okay.
And just leaning a little bit more into the natural behavior of people to make something with that, but then still have the balancing behind that to back it up, to make interesting choices.
So how long did it take you till you were, like, how long did it take you to do your balancing and everything before you actually felt comfortable with, okay, this is the game?
It was about a year and a half. It always feels so much longer.
Wow.
But yeah, I guess a little closer to 2 years. Like, it was interesting. I actually pitched it very early in development. I pitched it like a month or so after I did that original 2-hour prototype, and I didn't make that many changes to it.
Oh, wow.
But I was lucky in that Gamewright was really looking for sort of a back and forth relationship with a designer, at least for this sort of a project. And so I wasn't on my own developing this. So from very early on in the process, I was pitching it to them over and over again. So I would make some changes. I would send them a copy. They would play test it on their end. You know, there's even long before we signed the contract, we were just going back and forth and making these changes. So it's just
kind of exchanging
hours of yeah. And they would say, like, they would have product directions. They wanted to have interaction. So the fact that you were interacting with your other players is very important to them. They wanted to keep it fairly simple. So there's some stuff that they pushed back on, but yeah, there was a lot of the development, and many times during the process, I told my fellow designers, I'm like, I think this is it. You know, like 3 months into the process, I'm like, I think we got this. I think this is the perfect pool of cards. And every time I said that, obviously it completely broke. So there was a lot of just pushing it in a completely different direction. At one point, there was no hands. You had all the cards in front of you. It was anywhere from 6 card types to 30 card types in the deck. There was just so much exploration and pushing against the boundaries of the space to get it to where it finally ended up.
Is there anything that you want to let our listeners know on how they can get a hold of you, or how, you know, your social media? You have a website. Pitch yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Emma Larkins pretty much everywhere. Twitter is where I'm most active. I also have a website with a lot of links to different things. I run of the many, many things that I'm currently doing, I run a weekly digital playtest session. So if you are a board game designer looking to connect, we have people from all over the world. It's international. It used to be just Seattle. Now we have everyone.
Cool.
If you go to the Ludology Guild on Board Game Geek,
yep,
you can find the links for both my group and Gil Hova's group. Gil runs Tuesdays and Saturdays. I run on Wednesdays. So there's a lot of options now. And I just want to say, like, you know, things are tough right now. And I think designing and just finding people that you can kind of share and work creatively with has been really powerful. So it's important for me that people explore their creativity and make things, create things. So I'm always excited to see, you know, what designers are up to.
Yay! Well, that's fantastic. Ian, is there anything you want to touch base on before we do the exit?
This was great talking to you. It's nice to see inside the mind of a designer and what they go through. That's pretty cool. And I think we're all looking forward to Emu Escape in a couple of years too.
Yes. Gotta make a note on that one.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Emma. We hope to talk to you in the future, and it was a pleasure.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yay!
This episode is proudly supported by Mr. Dice Guy online board game retailer located right here in Saskatoon. Mr. Dice Guy is always stocking the hot new titles, as well as restocking all-time favorites. They even have a ding and dent section for previously played titles. They offer free shipping across Canada on all orders over $200, or free local pickup if you're in the Saskatoon area. Check them out at MrDiceGuy.com. Saskatoon's Mr. Nice Guy is Mr. Dice Guy.
And we are back. Cardboard Conjecture. This is the reviews section. The reviews.
Okay, so the other game that Jen and I have been playing through, other than the Tiny Epics, is that we've been playing a lot of Cosmic Encounter Duel, published by Fantasy Flight Games. It is designed by Frank Brooks with Peter Oloka and Greg Oloka and Bill Everly Oh, I severely apologize for the butchering of your names. So it's designed by Frank Brooks with these other folks, and it's actually very important to note that Peter and Bill were actually part of the original design team that brought us the original Cosmic Encounter.
Cool.
Pretty awesome.
That's awesome, because that we can see that DNA in here, and that Greg Oloka is actually Peter's son that helped design this game too. And if you couldn't tell from the title of Cosmic Encounter Duel, this is strictly a 2-player game only. So 2 players only are playing this, and it's going to be playing here in roughly about 30 to 45 minutes. The box says 30 minutes. Our games have been taking a little bit longer.
So is this like the new common terminology for 2-player versions of games, as we call them Duel now? Is that just
slap the word duel in there, or some sort of play on words of duel, and now you got a sweet 2-player experience of the bigger brother sister board game.
Because if they say number 2, then we're thinking of something different.
It's a funny joke. The solid number 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good jokes aren't the funniest, but they're solid number 2.
So let's give us the overview of what's happening here. So the Cosmic Citizenship Council has announced that it will only allow 2 new alien species to join its ranks, but they forgot to make 2 copies of the filing forms, which means that only 1 species can join. Now,
this is very Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy right now.
I was thinking the same thing.
The 2 candidates must battle for control of the planets to determine who deserves the right to become a certified civilization. Cosmic Encounter Duel. So, a game of Cosmic Encounter Duel will have players selecting the role of one of 27 alien races, each with their own abilities to twist the game into their favor. There are 3 ways that you can win Cosmic Encounter Duel. The standard way to win, in the main way that they advertise in the rule book, is that once you have your ships have presence on 5 planets. It's kind of the same as the older sibling here. As long as you have control or presence on 5 planets, you win the game. Or your alien race might have an alternative way of winning the game. Jen's come across a couple of them, and she's managed to pull off both of those ways, and I'm going to describe those later. And then the third way to win this game is if your opponent has no ships left in their supply and they have to send a ship to a planet, well, since they have no ships to send, you win. So the pace of Cosmic Encounter Duel is set by 3 decks of cards, which they will commonly be referred to as Destiny cards. And there's 3 different types of Destiny cards. There's the Discovery, there are Events, and then there's Refresh. The Discovery cards are where you will, spoiler alert, discover new planets, and then you'll have a duel over those planets, which is the main action and the meat and potatoes of this game. Event cards, these do crazy random things to shake up the game and attempt to make the game more interactive, but more so make things really, really crazy, and may even throw your whole plan. If you had a plan, it may just throw your whole plan way out the window. I'm going to get to some examples of what event cards have done to me in some of our games. And then refresh cards will give us opportunities to gain some resources going into the next duel, like get reinforcement cards, or take back some ships that have been sent to the warp, or drawing more cards into our hand, and yada, yada, yada. So the game will have players start by drawing Discovery card and having a duel right out of the gates. So the very first thing you're going to do right in this game is you're not going to prepare anything. You're going to have a duel. And there are multiple steps in order to complete a duel. 11 steps to be exact. And I know that sounds really, really crazy, but it's set up this way because it helps with the interaction of certain alien abilities. Like certain alien abilities will trigger at a certain step in the duel. So that's kind of why they have it set up that way.
The recipe.
But the recipe, it's very, very, very intuitive, very, very straightforward, especially even if you've played kind of like Cosmic Encounter before.
Cool.
And there's a very handy cheat sheet on the back cover of the rule book. So, and I think I'll mention that in the rule book section, but it lays it out very, very, very easy. in essence, what you do in a duel is you send ships to a planet by secretly selecting a number from 1 to 4. You have a little dial, you select a number from 1 to 4, and then you simultaneously reveal how many ships you are sending to this planet. Next, you'll get to enlist the help of any friendly alien races, and I'll explain how that works. You'll get into deploy tactics to remove opponent ships or protecting your own. At this point, potentially one player may have more ships than the other after this this little tactics phase of destroying and blocking ships. And if you have more ships on the planet, you're going to get a bonus. And that's going to get added to your kind of like attack strength at the end of the duel. Next, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be selecting and revealing a plan card from your hand. And these plan cards range in value of -2 to +42. Of course, it has to be 42. It's the answer of everything. Actually, even says on the card, 42 is the answer.
Right on.
Nice.
After you've revealed your plans, you can play reinforcement cards. So you can either increase your attack strength, or you can even decrease your opponent's attack strength. And after all of this, it sounds like a whole lot. You're going to determine the winner, whoever has the most value, this most attack strength, by that ship bonus I talked about, all the played cards, and then your alien race might have some sort of ability that might add or subtract from the totals. Here, you're either going to have a winner and a loser of the battle, and depending on what discovery card has come out, it'll say the winner gets a benefit or the loser gets a benefit. But in the essence, whoever wins the battle has control of that planet. The other player has to retreat their ships back to their supply, and now you've gotten one more planet to victory. And then after all this is said and done, at the very, very bottom of that card is going to tell you what the next card is going to be played. So out of those 3 decks, you either now play an event card, you're going to play a refresh card, or you might just have another duel card, essentially right away. And things are going to go like this, round and around and around until one of those end game triggers happens. So now I'm going to take a moment and talk about these friendships and what they refer to as, they're called the Envoys. At the beginning of the game, there's 3 alien races that are dealt face down to the table. And players can become friendly with these alien races over the course of the game. Being friendly with an alien race kind of gives you another ability when it comes to when having duels. As a reward during the course of play, this will allow you to gain friendship or even lose friendship. So gaining friendship means you're pulling alien races towards you. Losing friendship is pushing those alien races away towards your opponent, actually. At the start, they all start neutral, and these races hold just more abilities that can affect duels in big, big ways.
That's interesting.
In essence, that is Cosmic Encounter Duel. You're going to kind of play these cards, have duels, have events over and over again until one of the 3 games occurs.
Cool.
All right. So let's get into opinions. Outside in. This game is housed in a small box.
All right.
And it's a little bit larger than, say, the living card games that Fantasy Flight's known for. It's just a little bit larger than those boxes. Say like the Arkham Horror or the Lord of the Rings card games. It's just a little bit larger than those boxes. It's kind of like your new standard 2-player sized box. And of course, we talked about inserts, and it has the most lame insert possible. It's just one of those ones with the goofy art and the little well that's carved out in the middle, and it has like the 2 flaps.
Yeah, here's the trough.
Sides.
Yeah.
So useless, but there's not. This kind of also suffers from the Splendor syndrome, as there's too much box for the amount of components that you get.
Yeah.
The art is very vibrant and very aesthetically pleasing. It's very 80s retro. Is kind of like how I kind of put it.
It looked like a Duran Duran album cover.
Yeah. It's a little quite a bit more cartoony than the original Cosmic Encounter. And it really portrays the alien races, like the art on the alien races as well. Like I've got an example here in the show notes says the politician card is an alien that has 2 faces. The good face and the good face and the evil face, and he's the politician.
How many aliens are there?
27.
Okay.
different
Cool.
ones.
Okay.
And from what I can tell, these are 27 aliens that are not part of the original cosmic encounter.
Oh, so new things to explore then for.
But I have not seen or played all of the cosmic encounters, so don't quote me on that.
Okay.
Even though I'm now live on the air saying it.
It's conjecture, man. It's conjecture.
Exactly. Okay, components are really, really nice. The UFOs are clear plastic.
Cool.
They resemble the recent printing of Cosmic Encounter. They had the 42nd, I think, anniversary edition come out where they replaced the opaque plastic ships now with these clear plastics, and that's what they come with. The cardstock is your standard Fantasy Flight cardstock. It's very, very well done with that linen finish. Nice thick cardboard, planet tiles, tactic stands. Oh yeah, that's what these things called tactic stands. They're double-sided and they're meant to kind of like flip over, like kind of like an hourglass.
Mm-hmm.
And one complaint that I've heard a lot of people complain about is that they can never get their tactic stands to actually stand up. We haven't had that issue. I must have put them together properly or the way that they have intended, because our tactic stands stand up no problem. And we even play on a neoprene mat. It's not even a hard surface.
Yeah.
And so we haven't had, but apparently some people complain that the stands actually don't stand up like how they're.
So you heard Ryan. Everybody who was having problems with those stands, Ryan just told you it's because you didn't put it together properly, and he did.
He's basically
Just
saying
said
it's an
that.
IQ test, right?
Well, isn't that anytime you have to assemble some sort of component with no instructions? Okay. There's like a little cardboard standee that resembles the cat floating in space. Like you literally put together this little stand, and then like you set this little cardboard cat in the middle of it, and they kind of just freely float. You can actually flick it, and it kind of like sways back and forth.
Someone's quirky sense of humor.
And it's just to represent what they call the straggler. There's kind of like a leader and a straggler effect. And that's all it's used for, is just to denote who the straggler is. I don't know. Kind of neat. Over the top. Kind of neat, though. Rulebook. Rulebook is really good. It has 19 pages, which seems like a lot. But a lot of it is just kind of like, explaining in examples how a duel takes place. It's kind of like what it kind of does. And really, there's just like lots of graphics, which kind of like is really, really neat. You don't see this too often, especially in a Fantasy Flight rule book, which is because I'm expert on those. But lots of graphics. And so there's not really a lot of wasted space.
And typically, Fantasy Flight rule books come in a pair, don't they?
Yeah, they're bigger box games.
Here's the 3 rule books that come with this Fantasy Flight game.
And what's kind of neat is that they actually already kind of built in kind of like a FAQ in the back rule book, where it kind of explains a lot of the edge cases.
Yeah, probably from like play testing stuff, and yeah, cool.
Yeah, and then really what you're going to really want is just that very back cover, which does the quick reference on how a duel goes.
Nice.
And some icons and stuff like that.
Right on.
Okay. The gameplay, it's really fun. It's fun back and forth tactical play, where the heart of the game is just that dueling over the planets. And I also put in here managing your supply of ships and your cards. You have to manage your supply of ships very carefully, as you don't want to run out.
Well, you said if you tank out, the game's over. Yeah.
Risk losing the game. Because, have I said that yet? No. To some, the card play may be comparable to like a trick-taking game. As skilled players, you're going to be able to count the cards and keep track of what's been played and what's been discarded and stuff like that, so that you can get that kind of like tactical advantage over your opponent if you're able to keep track of that kind of information. But this gets muddled, though, with the introduction of the reinforcement cards. When you draw blindly off this reinforcement deck, those cards can swing a duel in somebody's favor. It is impossible to create the table dynamic of Cosmic Encounter in a 2-player experience. In a 2-player game here, there's no negotiations taking place. There's no back and forth jarring and manipulating with your opponents. There's no alliance making. Rather, we just have this mechanic of the friends with certain alien races that help you during the duels. This is an acceptable substitute in my books to the negotiations, like you're not going to be able to capture that negotiation feeling.
Well, as you're describing that, that's exactly what I was thinking. Going, hey, that's the best solution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Further, when a game effect tells you to gain friendship in an envoy, that essentially could be telling you you're gaining friendship in the alien race that your opponent has. So you're kind of sucking that friendship away from your opponent, which is kind of neat. I kind of
cool
like that.
Tug of war. Yeah.
Randomness comes in the event and refresh cards and can swing the game huge ways. Example, there's an event card that allows you to, that doesn't allow you, makes you swap your hand of cards with your opponent's hand of cards. So now I have my opponent. Just randomly, can't do anything about it. My cards are now yours, your cards are now mine. That could be good, that could be bad. Another one here, it says, look, you get to look through one of the decks of cards and you get to pick which card you want to play next. Like that's huge. This randomness, I would say, will off-put most people because you have no control over the situation.
But those people should not be playing Cosmic Encounter then.
No, absolutely not.
Go play a Euro.
Jen and I, we love this kind of thing. I'm going to give you an example of one of these situations. I lost a game just recently because of an event card. Told everybody, told me and Jen, we each had to destroy 2 of our ships from our supply. Well, those were my last 2 ships in my supplies. So because I didn't have any ships to send to the next duel, I lost the game. So eventually, just because of this one event.
So you got Thanos.
Yeah, I snap, my ships disappeared. I couldn't win the game. But that's the kind of game you're getting yourself into. It's crazy. It's random. It's
as long as you know that going in, yeah.
Yeah. Like we're not here for like a brain burner. We're not here for like strategic wargaming. We're here for like, we're going to have some chips. We're going to have some drinks. We're just going to kind of laugh at the kooky craziness that's going on here.
Cool.
Refresh cards. Like I said, sometimes you're really hoping for that the planets you control will grant you a certain resource, but they just never come up. It always seems. It's very rare that you'll actually be able to, once your ships have been destroyed and sent to the warp, it's very rare that you're actually going to get those ships back into your supply. I would say 3 of our 5 games that we've played so far has been because one of us has ran out of ships. And then the other 2 games are because Jen's alien races won her the game. Overall, there's really nothing unique about Cosmic Encounter Duel, other than they try to take this widely popular game that plays at large player counts very well and condensed it into a 2-player experience. Conclusion. It is really tough to place this one. When the original Cosmic Encounter is such a classic game and such a classic design, we really like the charm of Cosmic Encounter Duel. It's its own entity.
Yeah.
And it is a shame that it will always be in the shadow of the older sibling. But with that being said, this game captures the spirit of Cosmic Encounter, like the kooky craziness and the randomness and stuff like that. It just condenses it nicely into a 2-player experience from our. Lots of people are not going to like that randomness, so this is not a game for you. Then, if you don't like complete chaos and that randomness ruining your game, don't play this game. It's just a light, because this is it's a light game. It's not strategic in depth, but rather it just leans on tactics of the duels and having to deal with those event cards. So overall for me, this is a middle shelf game overall, as we still have Jen and I, we still have a lot of alien races to explore and play through. But I'm going to kind of go, I'm going to branch here. I'm going to do for the first time, and I'm going to make a subset shelf. If I'm going to do a subset shelf of just 2-player only, quote unquote, duel games, this one's on the top shelf for us.
Cool.
We really enjoy this one as a 2-player game, just because it's just so crazy. It's just random.
Well, and I mean, you said before too, it's like it's a half hour to 45 minutes. So it's not like you've invested 2-3 hours into this game and then all of a sudden the randomness just blows the top off your game kind of thing. So
just know that things like that can happen. Like we haven't gone through the, like, don't go reading through the event cards. It is fun to try to and know what's possibly coming up. And like I said, these decks are fairly sizable. You are not going to see everything in a game. Like you're probably only going to be seeing 10 out of the 30 event cards maybe in a game.
All right, cool.
So there's quite a bit of variability. But once you've seen them all, then you'll know what's coming up.
Right on.
Okay.
Anybody got any rebuttal or follow up?
Ian.
I don't know. Honestly, it actually sounds like they did the 2-player thing well. I just don't see Cosmic Encounter as a 2-player game. I just have trouble with that.
That was one of my first reactions. Like, hey, we announced Cosmic Encounter Duel. Here's the game that nobody asked for. Or at least in my opinion, I was never itching to play Cosmic Encounter with 2 players. That's what the whole point of Cosmic Encounter was. Get a table of like 5-6 people together and just let the chaos ensue.
Well, I guess if they're keeping the chaos, that's good. Like then they are hitting the spirit of the game, so that's good.
Yeah, and I really like that aspect that they got rid of the negotiation because you can't negotiate, and just have like this mechanism of just like pushing and pulling, having a tug of war with these other alien races, whether or not they're going to be my friends or your friends, or they're just going to remain neutral for the game.
Right on.
That's Cosmic Encounter Duel. Fantasy Flight Games, middle shelf in the grand scheme of my shelf, but if I'm looking at just my 2-player games, my dual games, it's on the top shelf of the 2-player.
Well, there you go.
Genre.
There you go. On that note, I would like to thank you very much for sticking around up to this point.
Another achievement unlocked.
Another achievement unlocked. Bling! I'm your host, Norm.
I've been Ryan.
I'm Ian.
And we'll catch you later. We are Bridge City Board Gamers, and you can find us on Twitter at BC Board Gamers, on Facebook, Bridge City Board Gamer Community, and on YouTube at Bridge City Board Gamers. You can also find us on BGG Guild number 3039.